Welcome to Stress Management Techniques for Lawyers in partnership with Community Legal Services. My name is Jesse Lyon, and with me is
Zach Dodson.
I'm happy to be sharing this with you. We've done a bunch of courses today, all of them going very deep into burnout and stress and work-life balance. And so I really like this one because we're going to get just very much an overview. Stress is something that all of us deal with. Particularly in this profession. Our professions are as mental health counselors and trauma therapists. And so I'm excited for this because we get to be very practical and we get to talk about the stress that all of us deal with. So we're going to jump in, particularly from the lens of two trauma therapists and how we help those who are recovering from either big PTSD moments or complex trauma and how they deal with stress. Because it kind of messes with your psychology.
Absolutely.
It messes with your sense of self, it messes with your mindset, and so you'll find that with us, as you listen to the CEUs or CLEs that we've recorded, we're very big on mindset. And once you understand the core principles of these things, it makes being successful so much easier.
Yeah, and just as far as like a underlying fundamental foundational perspective, I like stress. I like being in stressful situations. I like doing the most. I like being in a space to where it's going to be so stressful because I'm going to get a reward that is that good. And so as we're looking at this, let's take the perspective of the stress is not the bad thing. It's what I do with it. It's how I process it. It's where it sits. It's where it stays. Not just I want this stress-free life, because that can cause a lot of dysfunction in our systems when we are like saying, I don't want to be stressed, but I like doing the thing that I know is going to make me stressed.
I'm giggling because you ever met somebody who lives a stress-free life?
Yeah,
They're miserable. You can't talk to them.
Yeah, I don't want to.
You can't have a friendship or a relationship with them because they're just like, this is taking my spoons. This is stressing me out. I'm like, then what are we doing? What are we doing? So certainly there is a balance to be made. And I think I love what you're saying because it sort of hits on this one of the core mindsets that are not helpful and you see often evolve because of trauma, which is a black and white mindset.
Yeah.
So the goal here is not to label stress as good or bad. The goal here is not to have a completely stress-free life or a completely stressed life. It's to find this balance, which sounds obvious, but it's like, well, yes.
But to do that consciously, too, is
on purpose.
Yes, I want to do it on purpose. I want you to do it on purpose in such a way that makes it so that you're satisfied and content with how it's done. Engaged. Yeah. If you've met that attorney that wants to have a stress-free life and became an attorney to be live a stress-free life, you're delusional.
And you probably don't want to work with them if you've ever met them.
I don't.
Don't want to hire them to be on your team.
Right.
Yes, certainly there's a balance to be had there. So let's talk about understanding legal stress.
So, well, maybe first, what are your credentials for dealing with stress?
So probably the biggest stress in my life is running a private practice counseling clinic. We've got several locations across Orlando and a whole bunch of therapists. And, you know, you'd think that therapists would be great at dealing with stress. And they definitely have some tools, but sometimes those with the most knowledge have the most difficulty in application.
Do as I say.
Yes.
Not as I do.
Yes. And so I do run a counseling practice. Together, Zach and I have co-founded Trauma-Focused Hypnotherapy, which is an education company for counselors to learn how to use hypnosis to treat complex trauma. And then I make a bunch of social media content. I found a real niche for myself on the internet talking about dream interpretation because dreams communicate what's happening in our emotions. And so you can find all of that stuff at Lyon Mental Health. But I think the resources you're going to be looking for will be at Trauma-Focused Hypnotherapy. That's the school that we founded and provides resources for those who are looking to help with stress and trauma.
We're going to have a lot of resources for you after this presentation. Yeah. Please take advantage of that too.
Well, what about you, Zach? What do you do?
I think the first thing that comes up to my mind is, you know, there's the practice side of things, not just owning a practice, but owning the second largest private practice in the U.S.
Sounds stressful.
But I think the biggest thing is my actual personal practice of being a therapist and hypnosis. I have been for many years, and kind of moving out of this right now, the therapist that a lot of other therapists send cases when they don't know what to do. It feels overwhelming. And so the credential really there is the experience of working with a lot of people who have had some of the most, the biggest stress symptoms for the last 15 years or so.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
It's the end of the scale, the tipping point of as much stress as you can get to where life becomes non-functional anymore.
Every day, all day.
Yep. So let's talk about specifically the legal profession and the stress that's experienced in that domain. I think there's a lot of things that can contribute to stress. But when you're talking about stress, maybe we start there. Like, what do you kind of mean, and what things in the legal profession intensify that?
Well, maybe we talk about it from a particular lens of like, what is the stress? Kind of like what you're saying, but like, stress is not a bad thing, like you said. Stress is tension or energy put into something, and how much stress could end up breaking that material.
I think about it kind of like capacity. Like, so maybe you're imagining in your head like a rope or a rubber band being stretched. Maybe I'm thinking about like a water balloon.
Yeah.
And like, how much can that water balloon hold? Or how much can that, bag hold or, vase hold? It's like there's a point where it reaches kind of to the top. But as you stretch, as you fill, you gain capacity. And so stretching and releasing, just like muscles in the gym,
Exactly,
is a wonderful way to build not only resilience, but to build capacity. And in counseling, there's a term called self-actualization. Which is this idea of achieving the best version of yourself. You could see some parallels to spirituality and religious metaphors, but in the science of psychology, that's how we sort of define it. It's like, how do I actualize? How do I make actual this ideal version of myself? And it's through this, very intentional stretching and releasing, stretching and releasing.
Yeah, and that can happen through a lot of different ways. If we're not intentional about it, it's going to lead to things like burnout, physical symptoms, all of that. But we're also talking about this idea of like, what is a suggestion? And from a hypnotic perspective, a suggestion is something that is given to us, maybe with certain words, that has an intention behind it, conscious or unconscious, of relaying a different message.
Which I think is key, because first on this point is stress in law is expected, but suffering doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I think that communicates the mindset.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
When you're saying suffering doesn't have to be, though, what do you kind of mean? Like, how would you sort of describe that difference between stress and suffering? Because I think for many of us it can feel the same or sound almost like synonyms.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, stress is just the energy that's put into that material. Suffering is a state where we can't get rid of it. As a metaphor.
Almost taking the agency away.
Yeah, or an ability to choose, an ability to do anything about it, or at least the feeling of not being able to do anything about it. So stress is, I got a deadline, but with suffering is, I don't know if I can reach this deadline. This is what happened last time I didn't meet that deadline. And so therefore I am bad because, and I'm saying this, and our brains are a little bit trickier when they say it to us rather than just with those words right there.
They're not so straightforward.
Yeah. It's like I'm bad for not meeting this deadline that I don't know if I'm going to meet. And so the suffering, what it does is it takes the agency away for me. Now I'm just bad, and I'm giving myself the suggestion of being bad, or not worthy, or not good enough, or something along those lines. because of this thing that hasn't actually even happened yet.
Yeah, man, if I could talk about, there's some wonderful research about children who grow up in emotionally dysfunctional families.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different categories, and I'm not going to go into all those, many categories of emotionally dysfunctional families. But what they find with these children is that they grow up in, really, you can box them down into one of two ways. We kind of call them internalizers and externalizers. And so what that means is, as that child grows up and they look at the stress and the chaos that's around them, right? This family was not protecting or caring or nurturing them in the way that they needed. One child will say, well, this is chaos. This is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going to take responsibility for everything. Everything's my fault. I'm going to fix it all, right? I'm going to become the parent that my parents aren't being. Now, another child, same situation, looks out, sees chaos, and says, this is all nonsense. This is chaos and stressful. So therefore, nothing's my fault. And so you can see how that develops this identity about ourselves, this way of interacting with the world, and then some consequences to those behaviors. You know, one may be a very high performer, high achiever, but they're crippled with burnout, stress, and anxiety because everything is their fault. The other one may be really good at leading people because they're like, I take no responsibility for everything. I'm perfect. I'm fantastic. But they often struggle to hold themselves accountable or to have the self-discipline to really achieve the full level of success that they need. And so I say all that and I give that example because when we talk about stress, mindset is so important, specifically when it comes to suffering. Because in both situations, the reason that those extreme mindsets develop is they are seeing that I didn't choose to be in this environment. I didn't choose to experience this stress. I'm suffering because I can't get out of it. I'm a child. I can't change it. I'm a child. My parents don't listen. I just have to respond to it. And so when you're in that environment of suffering for a while, you develop these, both are extremes. Neither one is the right option. It should be a balance. Some things are in my control. Some things are outside of my control.
Yeah.
I will accept the things that I can control and make changes on those, and I'll leave the other ones that are outside of my control alone. I'll just learn to accept those. That's healthy balance. But it's helpful to illustrate that difference between stress and suffering because really a lot of our identity about ourselves and about stress and suffering begins in that context. And then we may not realize that we're behaving in the same way, taking too much responsibility or abdicating responsibility in our adult lives because there's this ingrained pattern, this routine, this habit that we have.
And you can see how that affects like our work day.
Yes.
What I accept to come through the door or to be laid on my desk.
Which I don't know if there's, I might be hard pressed to find more of a masochistic profession than the legal one, with deadlines and stress and taking on people's problems as if they're their own. And so it leads me to think, it's like, wow, I wonder what developed inside of that person and in a lot of my lawyer clients to create that type of way of viewing the world. But it can lead to a lot of stress. A lot of stress.
Yeah.
So statistics are high for the legal profession and the amount of stress that they deal with and the amount of burnout. The number of stressors is also very high. Like I said, deadlines and clients and peers. Things are high stakes and very detail oriented. There's not a lot of room for human error as a lawyer. And so that creates stress. And it impacts us a lot. Anything to add?
Yeah, it's great.
I think it's important. So what is stress doing to you? With some of your, maybe I'll make it personal, like with some of your clients that walk into your office, what are some of the things that you notice, like maybe even before they say a word, that you're like, this person is stressed?
There's so many indicators there, but especially when you do it this long, there's just picking up on everything. A lot of times you can see them physically.
I look for shoulders, personally. When the shoulders are up, when people aren't looking around, like taking time, being mindful with their steps into my office, and their shoulders are up, they go, just sit right down. That's usually an indicator to me. It's not one-to-one, right? But it's like, that is clinically significant.
Yeah.
I'm noticing their behavior. I bet they're stressed.
Yeah. I think it's a big one is just the words and if they're coming in looking like they need to have some sort of big exhale, that's a big one. Like when they just come in and they're just like, they're just so focused on this, they could, I mean, I bet you they wouldn't even recognize sometimes if there's another person that walked into the room in the middle of their session. They'd just be like so focused in on me usually that they just carry off.
I'm sure you've had the experience, but have you ever talked with somebody who almost feels like they're holding their breath every time they talk to you?
Yeah.
It's like they've never exhaled. So I love that you said that. It's just like, it's almost like there's air constantly in their lungs and right up here at the top. And so they're always talking really like this, and it's really quick and it's really pressured and the words come out fast. It's not this like diaphragmatic breathing or speech. And that's a huge indicator to me as well. It's like everything's right here, like almost caught in the throat. And so being able to notice somebody when they breathe that out, and my goal kind of as a counselor is to get them to that moment where they breathe it out and can actually have a conversation. I know that we're relieving stress, but it's very much stored in the body. And we know that from the research as well.
Yeah.
And some great books about how the body keeps the score, and how both regular stress and traumatic stress are carried in the muscle fibers of the body. And we learn more and more about how memory is held there too. And so, they talk about how we should stand up and not sit all the time. I think there are very real physical reasons for that, but there's also emotional ones too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and those two are even connected.
Oh, for sure.
If we're not in tune with our emotions, we're not going to be in tune with our body. If we're not in tune with our body, we're not going to be in tune with our emotions, and it's just going to make thinking that much more difficult.
Yeah. How much sleep someone's getting is important too. People who tell me that they struggle to fall asleep or stay asleep. Now, there's a lot to sleep, right? So again, not one-to-one, but when someone starts telling me that they aren't sleeping well, it's like, ooh, I'm going to ask some follow-up questions about stress to that individual.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, have you ever had a conversation with somebody about how they are having a hard time with sleep, and then they don't have stress?
Well, I was going to say maybe, but those people who I might have said maybe for are stressed about not being able to sleep. And that causes them to struggle to sleep more. Sleep is a funny thing. Well, and this is a bit of my subject matter expertise because of the dream thing. A lot of people don't realize that sleep is not really about relaxing. People get it wrong all the time. Sleep is actually a concentration exercise. That's why if you go into the military and they teach you how to fall asleep rapidly, it's a concentration technique. When we were little, there was the nursery rhyme that told us to count sheep. It's a concentration activity.
Yeah.
And so the first stages of sleep are actually about concentration. But what ruins your concentration the fastest? Stress. If you are stressed, you can't concentrate. And so if you can't concentrate, you can't sleep, which gets people confused because they think that I need to relax to sleep.
No.
But that's not actually how sleep works. So if your concentration skills are good, you can sleep well. But yeah, sleep is huge. And so no, I've never met anybody who was struggling with their sleep that did not also have stress that was causing that. Now there may be some diet, some exercise, some medications that could help, but stress is always a factor.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever spoken to somebody where it's like the first thing that we went to was in stress.
Not that I know of. What about mental though?
Yeah.
When we have stress, what does it do to our minds?
Well, it comes back to that word that we like so much, depotentiation.
Hypnosis word.
Yeah. It is the removal of potentials. And so when somebody is stressed, they are going to be less creative. They are going to be ruminating more. They have intrusive thoughts more. They're going to be able to control their thoughts a whole lot less than we are. They're going to be able to strategize well. They're not going to be able to come up with a plan or think about like what levels of cognition is, as we describe it in our profession, which are a level of cognition is if I do this, then that thing will happen.
Yes.
And so generally speaking, we can do that like between 3 and 4 times. If I do this, then this will happen, and then I can do that, and that will happen. So that's 2. And somebody that's stressed can do it like 3 or 4 times, or 3 or 4 levels. But somebody that's not stressed can do it between 8 and 10, depending on their intelligence level.
That's significant.
Yeah, and so your planning is going to be reduced. Your ability to, play chess is going to be reduced if you're stressed.
True. The mental chess game that is being a lawyer, which it very much is. Well, and I think it's helpful maybe at this point to talk about the mind and how it works with stress. There's kind of like, you ever scrolling through your phone, you're just like, your brain's not on, you're watching TV, you're just like very relaxed. Maybe you're like sitting on the beach, you're actually on vacation. I don't mean like avoiding stress by scrolling on your phone. I mean like actually relaxed, right? Your mind, your prefrontal cortex, the thinking, chewing part of your brain, analytical part of your brain is off. You're just relaxing. As we introduce stress into that mental system, it kind of goes up. And so we have this peak of performance at a certain balance of stress.
Yep.
After that peak, we go back down and we see the same brain, prefrontal cortex is off again. And so what we're talking about is when we cross that threshold into too much stress. Healthy stress on this side, unhealthy stress on this side. And so sure, like a certain level of stress, a healthy level of stress that feels manageable and feels accomplishable is important for us to focus and concentrate, right? Like I have this level of stress, there is a deadline, so I'm held accountable to the things that I want to accomplish. That helps me act expeditiously to get that thing done. But if it feels insurmountable, if that stress crosses over that threshold to where I do not feel a sense of capacity and ability to overcome that thing, well then I get paralyzed again. Just as if I was sitting on a beach away from everything. It's the same level of paralysis. I'm not accomplishing anything productive because I'm overstressed. And so it is helpful to make that distinction. And so when you cross over that threshold, you'll see things like rumination, irritability, emotional jumps, going from one thing to another, racing thoughts, intrusive thoughts, disassociation, not being connected with like your present reality. Those are all huge mental signs that we have crossed that stress threshold. And now we're in a place where that stress is not propelling us. It is actually, holding us back.
Yeah, very much
slowing us down. Anything to add to that?
I don't think
I think it's important to distinguish. Yeah. Oh, and legal stress usually equals chronic stress. So let's talk about timeline just for a second, Zach. I think it's important to know that part of that expanding and contracting of stress that builds capacity is the timeline. There is a time when I am stressed, and then there's a time when I'm not stressed. And I think one of the differences in the legal profession, though, is it's chronic.
Yeah.
Right? We've got multiple cases at a time, got multiple deadlines. And so as soon as one is finished, I move my attention to the next deadline. There's not a sort of reflection, decompression period. It's just one stress to the next stress.
And it's also almost like that amount of stress and going from one stressor to another stressor is pedestaled. Like we put that lifestyle on a pedestal.
Oh,
and so it's
idealize it.
Yeah. We like it. And it gives us almost like a sense of control over the type of stress if we can use it and have it in that way in our lives.
Yes. Well, and you're making me think of something else that's important to mention. The body builds systems around what we're exposed to. Right?
Absolutely.
Like
100%.
You can see this with like blood viscosity, right? If you're in a northern climate where it is cold, your blood will actually thicken so you can maintain heat and warmth. But if you go down to a tropical climate, it'll take a little bit, but your blood will actually change to be thinner so that way you can dissipate heat more rapidly. And so our bodies are always changing to the environments that we are introducing them to. And so when there is no sort of reflection or decompression period to our stress, we enter into chronic stress. So imagine two things here. One, we've crossed over the stress threshold to where it doesn't feel manageable. And then two, it never lets up. That becomes our norm. And so the levels of adrenaline and cortisol inside of our brain start to normalize. It's like, well, this is Jesse's every day. So this must be normal because Jesse is telling us this is normal. He never lets his foot off the gas. And so
That's
then
what he does.
What happens is when I let the foot off the gas, my brain goes, what are you doing? something must be terribly wrong. This doesn't happen to us. And so then, as silly as it sounds, I can become stressed, panicked, because I'm not stressed. And I've certainly experienced that in my life. And I know that those listening on the other side of the screen can experience that in their life too. You ever taken a vacation, but it's just hard to turn off? It takes days to turn off.
Knew you were going there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true.
I mean, maybe there's some stuff you want to add or some thoughts about that.
It's the normalization of stress. And
It's hard.
when there is a normalization of stress, it's going to be something that is very stressful.
I love it when people tell me they're like, I'm a high adrenaline kind of guy or gal. I'm a high stress kind of person. I'm a high intake kind of person.
Okay.
What I often hear is, so you mean you're chronically stressed?
Yeah.
You've now made that a part of your identity. There's a difference between somebody, like maybe like an ADHD brain, moves very quickly, likes to do a lot of stuff, very busy brain. There's a difference between that and somebody who is chronically stressed.
Right.
Somebody who has a lot of interests and is like, a high energy type of person will also enjoy bike riding or CrossFit, right? Or basketball.
But that's relieving.
That's relieving. It's still high energy.
Yeah.
And so there are some people who are high energy, right? Other people are a little bit more, like, let me sit with my cat and knit, like character tropes for sure. But you get what I'm saying. But there's differences between like, I'm just constantly doing stressful things versus I just like to do a lot of stuff because I'm a high energy person.
Right.
Those are different things. Those are very different things. And so be careful what you say about yourself.
And you said that so great that I just want to reiterate it. It's like the stress has become an identity. Look for that in yourself and in the people that you're working with. How has the stress of their situation, of their space, become actually their identity? And I love the thing that a very wise man once told me. He's like asking me whether or not I was running to something or running away from something. And
that's insightful.
It's so easy to identify stress in somebody, including myself, when we think about the words that we choose that describe whether or not I'm running away from something or I'm running to something. To being the positive and I'm in control and I like the high octane stuff.
Me too.
The running away from something is the very stressful normalization of a lifestyle that's not good for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does it do to your brain? The neuroscience of stress. We talked a little bit about it already, but let's go a little bit deeper into the fight or flight response in the parasympathetic nervous system. I want you to read these things that are on this slide, but the part that I want to add to it that's not here is talking about the way that we will often motivate ourselves with fear.
Yep.
And I see this a lot with my clients.
It's a good short-term motivator.
It works well, short-term, but it's not a long-term solution. I do want to mention that I see this a lot with those who maybe are neurodivergent, right? Those who are maybe a little bit more on the autism spectrum, a little bit more on the ADHD spectrum, but it can happen to anybody. The brain may struggle to regulate dopamine, which is our motivation chemical. And when the brain struggles to regulate the dopamine, right, and you see that with ADHD, the research that's coming out with it is very fascinating, that it struggles to have this nice constant flow of dopamine, which makes us feel good. It's a good chemical. It's a happy one, but it's also very motivating. If you were to take, just as an example, dopamine away from a body, like if I took all the dopamine in your brain and just sapped it out of you, you would be paralyzed.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that it's that important. You wouldn't be paralyzed because your brain couldn't communicate to your muscles or that your organs didn't work. But it would paralyze you because there would be no motivation to do anything. And so they did studies like this. They would introduce some changes to the dopamine in rats and then put cheese right in front of them. And even though the rat was very hungry, the rat wouldn't move toward that cheese because there was no dopamine to motivate them. All the muscles were good. They had the capacity to move, but they wouldn't because the dopamine wasn't there. And so if you're not taking time to recharge your dopamine levels, to let them reset so you can have motivation again, one, that's bad. And you won't hear me say that a lot, but that one is bad. And then two, the way that you can overcome that is with adrenaline. If I scare something to where it's afraid for its life, it'll move. And so if I become afraid for my career, my livelihood, the people that rely on me to make a paycheck or to be successful, I can get those deadlines accomplished.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, the consequences of motivating yourself in that way are dire. They're really profound.
Yeah.
And a lot of us live that way, and a lot of us have normalized in that way of living.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple bullet points on the screen, but I think I needed to provide that narrative so we understood.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do a lot of self-medication in that space right there, to where we spend a lot of time self-medicating, whether it's behaviorally or chemically, in order to make it so that we can still do those things, even though we have that really kind of messed up relationship between adrenaline and cortisol and dopamine.
A lot of risk-taking behaviors can help in those situations, a lot of fear behaviors, and a lot of substances.
Yeah.
Legal and illegal can be a huge part. Practical stress management techniques. Let's talk about what to do about it. So now you know what to look for and how it's affecting your brain, but what do we actually do? When somebody walks into your office and you're noticing their shoulders are up, they walk a little bit too directly, they don't notice what's going on around them, and so you're picking up some stress signs. They talk about how their sleep is bad. They talk about how they're emotionally dysregulated. 1 minute they're happy, 1 minute they're sad. What do you start to tell them to do?
Something. It's usually going to be something ridiculous. So the first thing that came in my mind was jumping jacks.
Nice. Why do you tell them to do ridiculous? That's so great.
And the reason why is because this is where we're talking about with depotentiation, is they come in, their entire world is that stress. Their entire world is whatever is happening that is bad. Right then, and I want to say something that is outside of the peripheral to shake up this perspective. The cool thing about this is that a therapist is doing it in a safe way to make it so that somebody can de-stress. The problem is us doing this for ourselves. We're not sitting down with our therapist.
It's hard for me to surprise myself.
Yeah.
That's why we can't tickle ourselves.
Yeah.
There's an element of tickling that needs surprise psychologically.
Yeah.
Fun fact for the day.
Yeah. And so I would do something to first break that up, make it so that they are not like this, but they are shocked in a healthy way, to where alternatives can be open to them. And so it is about alternatives and creativity, I think.
Yeah, I think you make a good distinction between fear and surprise.
Sure.
I can do something surprising. My job is not to do something that creates fear.
Yeah. I don't want my client to be afraid of me.
My therapist saying do jumping jacks is surprising, but it's not creating fear. That's important to understand.
Right. Bringing a pet snake into the office is going to be very different.
It may not be advisable.
No.
I'll do some of the same things. Like, I certainly want to say something that's outside the realm of what is expected, without creating fear. And so there's so many different ways that you can do that. I don't think it matters. But what does matter is doing something outside of your norm, especially one that you choose, is incredibly powerful.
Right.
I don't think you need us necessarily to tell you what to do. In fact, I think that might sabotage the whole process. But you taking a moment to think, well, what is something that I don't do? I'll give you a great example from my grad school.
Great.
My professor used to say in the beginning of school, he's like, I want you to pick a sport, one that you hate, so that way you don't care if you're good or bad at it. And then I want you to go do that sport once a week. And so,
That's great.
Usually it was like golf or baseball, right, or basketball. And so he's like, when you get, like, let's say golf, right, when you get to the driving range, you hate this sport. So that's great. You have no vested interest in this thing. But I want you to just hit that ball with as much vehemence and aggression as you can possibly muster to get it out. And so what he was doing is he was introducing something that was totally novel, something way outside of anything that I actually care about, so that way I could not care about it and just experience my emotions.
Yeah.
Batting cages. Like, I don't care if I hit the thing. I just want to swing the bat as hard as I can.
Right.
That's so good for you. And so it's like, I don't know, maybe some people make fun of it, but other people take up coloring books. It's like, that may sound a little silly, but like, that's the point. Do something silly that is just not something you care about. So that way it can be just for you.
And something that creates creativity.
Creativity is good.
Nuance. A new routine. You know, like what he said there was go to do that sport once a week. And that creates a planning and an intention behind it where...
You have to be specific. You have to drive to the driving range.
Yep.
It's an important part of it.
Yep. When we're doing new things like that, we also pay attention to, like, one of the points on the slide is just like breathing. I get surprised and then not surprised by asking people when the last time they thought about their breathing was.
May have been a while.
Yeah.
Maybe you can ask yourself that question now.
And when we do things like that are new, nuanced, and inspire creativity, one of the things that happens is that we just start paying attention to our breathing. You know, like at the batting cage, when you don't like baseball, you will go, okay.
Or scream a little bit.
Sure.
Screaming is good too.
Sure.
Some nice diaphragmatic breathing.
Yeah, but it's true.
Yeah.
Right before you swing the club at that ball, you're going to be paying attention to your swing, your body, your posture. You're going to be paying attention to those things. When you become an expert at it, we actually lose some of that intentionality.
Yeah, it gets a little bit, well, the stress starts to creep back in because we actually care again.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be good at this. And so I don't know what that thing is for you, but go find it.
Yeah.
And even better, try some things and find out that wasn't the right choice. Giving yourself that space, I think, is incredibly important. I mean, there's this concept called the beginner mind, right?
I love it.
Which you could probably speak more eloquently on than I can. But it's this idea that, like, we're doing something that we're kind of stupid at on purpose.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
And
I mean, I know you're into the beginner mind quite more than I am.
We could do a whole course on it, but that was perfect. It's like
Good.
I want a beginner mind cultivates creativity. It has to. It's innate in it.
Yeah.
Cultivates intention. It's innate in it. So
yeah. Well, and I'll take this moment to remind you. Also, go to bed.
That's great.
Sleep as well. We hit that, but a good reminder again. Go to sleep. Let's talk about building resilience, because as much as we are managing the stress and finding ways to cope with it, how do we also build not only our stress tolerance, but our resilience from stress, contract? Some important things. And this, I think, goes a little bit back to mindset more than anything.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, maybe I'll start in the middle to explain. Cool. I love the idea of boundaries. We've said this a lot, but it's a really good thing here is to be aware of the fact that there's a big difference between a boundary and an expectation. Boundaries are for me. Expectations are for somebody else.
Tell them.
A lot of times what will happen is I'll say, my boundary for you is this, this, and this. But really what that means is it's an expectation. I have an expectation for your behavior.
Yeah.
My boundary is based on what I'm going to do when I'm presented with a certain set of data. And so that looks like practically, hey, when you yell and scream, I'm going to disengage from the conversation. I'm telling you what I'm going to do.
This guy.
Right. You're not allowed to scream at me. That's an expectation and not a boundary.
You can't control that.
Yeah.
They may scream at you. I can control my response to screaming. I'm not going to scream back, and I'm not going to engage. In fact, I'm going to proactively leave. Sounds like you're not ready to have an adult conversation, so I will wait until a time at which you're ready to have an adult conversation. Yeah. And I think that's so critical, because when we tell people what to do, we actually communicate weakness. I'm trying to control somebody else, because what I'm communicating deep down is that you have things you can do which scare me.
Yeah.
When I communicate a boundary, I'm saying, nothing you do scares me. You're allowed to do whatever you want as a human. but I'm going to make
I'm good.
decisions that are healthy for me. And so it communicates much more strength and resilience on topic here. I'm glad you started with that. I think that's critical,
Yeah,
like setting
I think
boundaries.
Focal point.
That's time, that's emotions, that's demands, like
Well,
respect.
You said something that was really, really important, and I think that everybody could learn a little bit more about this, which is if I feel like I have to be in control, it means that I don't believe that I'm in control. If I have to exert my strength, then it means that I don't feel strong. If I have to control a conversation through force, then it shows unconsciously actually my weakness rather than my strength. And somebody that's mindful can very easily manipulate it. And
I love watching debates for that reason.
sure,
You can tell the person who's more stressed about the debate by which one tries to control the conversation more. You can
Sure.
really tell who's losing
yeah,
by whose voice gets louder,
yeah,
by who interrupts the other one more. They're afraid. They're
Yeah,
losing.
yeah.
And you all, I mean, we're saying things that you all know from the courtroom. It's like you see that. I mean, everyone who's listening to this has a high level of proficiency with communication and speech and debate.
Right. And that's why I think boundaries are so important in understanding what they are, because the better I am at setting boundaries for myself, the better I'm going to be in that setting with somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that brings us to the point that I wanted to hit on probably the most, which is self-compassion.
Yeah.
Self-compassion can be tough because I think we often interpret that as weakness, right? If I let myself have a pass on everything. And I'm certainly not saying have a pass on everything. What I am saying is honesty. I think I might take a surprising turn with this topic of self-compassion and really relate it more to honesty with anything else than with anything else. I'm not saying everything's okay, but what I am saying is when you make a mistake, do you give yourself the compassion to say, yeah, that was the wrong choice. That's also okay that I made the wrong choice because now I'm going to make the right choice. I think we often struggle with that. And when we don't have self-compassion, we double down on our stress, and that wrong choice can't possibly have been a wrong choice because I don't have the compassion to admit that. And to be honest with myself, this is internal stuff. I don't need to share this with my coworkers. This is inside of me, maybe with my therapist. But can I say like, yeah, I made the wrong choice. I'm also allowed to make wrong choices, and now I'm going to make a different choice. That compassion allows us honesty that keeps us from getting into stressful situations that become chronic. Because when you make a mistake and then can't admit it was a mistake, and then have to continue through with that mistake, trying to convince yourself and everyone else it wasn't a mistake, the amount of wasted emotional stress energy that comes from that decision is a crying shame. It's a shame that that much of you gets lost inside of that piece. And so I don't know where the idea that we can't make mistakes comes from. I think it's different for each person, but being able to have that self-compassion, not to give yourself a free pass on everything, but to be able to say, yeah, that was wrong. Okay, I'm gonna fix it. That goes a long way, especially in our relationships, not only with ourselves, but with our very intimate, partners, maybe close friends or romantic relationships. Key. That builds resilience. When you can be like, that's okay. Much more resilient. And then the last piece.
Yeah.
Speaking from inside to outside, finding support. Having, it comes from self-compassion too, I believe, but being able to normalize reaching out for help when we need it. You don't need everybody to do everything for you, but knowing that you're not alone, critical.
Yeah, or knowing where you need to go to get a certain resource. Knowing how to get a specific resource, I think is the biggest thing with support and building resilience. Is like, I don't need to solve this right now because I have a specialist in this subject that I can get a hold of really quick.
Yeah, if you have to do everything,
Yeah, it's a
that's
lot,
going to be very stressful.
and you're not going to be very resilient.
No, you're certainly not. Certainly not. Well, it's nice to be like, okay, I'm good at this thing. I'm going to chew on it. Then I'm going to hand it off to you, Zach, because you're good at this thing. I breathe. Zach stresses. Zach passes it back over. Now Zach breathes. I stress. And so if you just think about human beings as living creatures, that's the way that we are. We're pack animals. And so if we don't have that social support, well, it's not going to work out. You're certainly not going to be resilient. You're certainly not going to be able to manage stress. work-life boundaries without the guilt? Oof. How do you do it? How do you do it, Zach? Whew.
The fundamental aspect of work-life boundaries is me having autonomy and the ability to choose. It always comes back to that is, do I have autonomy? Can I choose this? Am I able to take my next best step rather than take somebody else's step for them? Some practical things here, but it is about control. Do I have control over when the phone rings? No, but I do have control over the status of my phone, whether or not it's on silent or not.
Yep. Yep.
And then with that comes, I think, a lot of trust. Is setting boundaries with when I'm going to turn my ringer on, or when I'm going to pick up a call.
Yeah. I think what's great with this is ask yourself, what decisions am I not allowed to make?
Yeah, that's a great question.
If you can just ask yourself like what decisions you're not allowed to make, that will pretty quickly show you where you've lost independence and autonomy in your life.
And for anybody that might take that too literally, what decisions are you setting the artificial boundary, the artificial rule that says you're not allowed to do that? The actual, I don't have the ability to do this thing, that's bad enough. But how many times do we have these artificial boundaries that say, I'm not allowed to do that thing?
Yeah. Turning your phone off, saying no, saying yes to things that do refill you, taking a break. If you've lost your ability to say yes and no, you might be suffering rather than just stressing. That's tough. I can't be allowed to stay that way. Okay, cultivating a resilient inner dialogue. The things that you say to yourself are crazy important. Yeah. Crazy important.
We were talking about suggestions earlier.
Yeah, we have a lot of suggestions.
This is it right here.
And sometimes they happen so fast that we don't even realize we're saying these things. We talked about that internalizing versus externalizing mindset. We talked about being the victim, right? Do I have this idea that life happens to me rather than I make life happen, right? Victim to victor is what I call that. Being able to recognize what message I'm saying. If I'm leading those people who depend upon me and bringing them success, that's one thing. But if I feel that I am almost turning that around and I must continue because everyone depends upon me, well, now I've lost my ability to choose. And so even though as positive as that mindset may sound, it's like I'm trying to serve others, it can still be a mindset that leads us to lose our real capacity and, well, our true actualized self.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Yeah, I think that just paying attention to the suggestions that we're making, colloquialisms, systems in the workplace, ideas in the workplace, it can be even as simple as, well, you know how he is. I do know a part of him. Things like, you know that I'm a straight shooter.
What do we mean by that?
That statement is not shooting things straight in itself, so there's dissonance, and we need to talk about what is that thing that you're actually consciously or unconsciously trying to suggest.
Yeah. Tone, I think, is important. How do I speak to myself? Does it sound like a bad sports coach who just talks down to you? It's like, what are you doing? Get up. Can't believe you. Like, why are you this way?
Yeah, or even empathy.
Or is it kinder?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you've worked really hard. We just got one more day. Let's just take this one more day. We'll finish this up and we'll take a break. You've earned it. That's much nicer. Mm-hmm. You're going to be, not only, you're going to be a lot more stress resilient, but people are going to want to spend time with you. If you talk to yourself that way, I can't imagine how you talk to others. And, I'm sure you on the other side of the screen are like, no, I would never talk to anybody that way. Yes, I know the words that you say may not be as harsh to others as they are to yourself, but the way that you treat yourself is communicated in your body language, in your tone, in your behaviors and your actions. And so even if you're not verbalizing the words that you're saying to yourself in your head to others, it's still coming across. And other people are going to be afraid to open up and be honest with you if you're not showing up with empathy and kindness and self-compassion for yourself. And so, yes, I hear what you're saying, but it's deeper than that.
It's a lot deeper.
Communication is a lot more nuanced than just literally the words coming out of your mouth. You'll notice how people start to treat you different. When you're compassionate to yourself, people recognize that, and they're much more likely to be honest and compassionate with themselves, leading to a more cohesive, and a more efficient team. Critical. All right, final takeaways. Let's wrap this whole thing up. Zach, put you on the spot here a little bit. But if you're going to give, biggest tip, if one thing that they were going to take away from this kind of lecture on stress, or maybe a client's walking in and they're just you get them for one session, you teach them something about stress. What do you think is the biggest takeaway for you?
Intention. The biggest, the most profound way, I think, to effectively deal with stress is going to be intention. The abdication of stress being in my life, as it says, stress is inevitable, suffering is optional. That's the underlying principle there is, if I have no control over it, I'm going to exacerbate whatever the stress is.
Yeah.
And especially its effect on my mind and my body. So I think it's about control.
Control and intention.
If you're stressed, if you're stressed and suffering, you feel like you don't have control.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the internal dialogue part is perhaps my favorite. In the story that we tell ourselves. I think that as we go through life, we all play characters. In Jungian psychoanalysis, we call those archetypes. But they are characters that we play. And so right now I'm playing licensed mental health counselor and teacher, educator character right now. When I go home, I'll play father to my son. I'll play husband to my wife. When I go back to the office, I'll play boss. When it's on the weekend, maybe I'm playing adventurer, right? As I go explore something, go on a biking trail. But if we start to live life from a character that is like the martyr, right? Or if we start to live life from the character that is like the sufferer, right? The refugee, somebody who's doomed, almost damned to be in a place of suffering, and we see our value as suffering. That's going to be really, really difficult. And there's a lot of things. Maybe I'm just speaking about myself and hoping to relate. There's a lot of things that I personally grew up with, where I was told that the more that you suffer, the more valuable you are. And there were a lot of things in my culture and community that told me the more that you suffer, the more valuable that you are. And so it developed inside of me this belief that I was one character. But the truth is, real self-actualization is the ability to be all the characters.
That's great.
Sometimes I can be the jokester, right? Sometimes I can play tricks. Sometimes I can be serious and a leader. Sometimes I can be the loafer, right? Someone who's just kind of bumming around. It's important to have the flexibility, the capacity, and the intention to play the character that I need at each moment. And if I get locked into a character, I'm going to be locked into stress. And so I hope the thing that you take away is think about the story that you're living, and think about the stress that you're going through and how you're organizing that stress by the story that you tell yourself, and then tell yourself a better story. And so to all of you watching, I hope that you take some time to let that stress propel you to be the best version of yourself, not stop you from doing the great things that you were always destined to be. And so if you're looking for more resources, Zach and I are very passionate about getting good mental health resources into the hands of those who need it most. So check out trauma-focused hypnotherapy for those resources. And a thank you to Community Legal Services for having us on this. Wish you the best. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.